Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Dean's Lecture Series at Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar. I'm Michael Trick. I'm the Dean here at CMU-Q, and it is my pleasure to have you here today. Today, it is my honor to welcome back to CMU-Q His Excellency Dr. Ibrahhim Ibrahim. His Excellency is a longtime friend to Carnegie Mellon. We are delighted to have him here today to share his perspective. His Excellency has a long history of service to the state of Qatar. He has been the economic advisor to His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani since 2013, and served that same role for His Highness the Father Emir, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani from 1988 to 2013. In 2006, His Excellency was appointed to establish the General Secretariat for Development and Planning and to serve as its first Secretary General. Under his leadership, the General Secretariat led the coordination of the Qatar National Vision 2030 and subsequently the preparation of Qatar's first National Development Strategy 2011 to 2016. These two forward-looking documents have provided the foundation for the state of Qatar's social, human, economic, and environmental development planning. Some of you, if you've been here a while, may remember that His Excellency was the speaker at the very first Dean's Lecture on February 15, 2011, when he spoke to this campus about the Qatar National Development Strategy and Qatar National Vision. Today, His Excellency will be speaking about Qatar's natural gas strategy, a topic that touches on many of the areas that we teach at CMU-Q in the areas of business, science, and technology. Before I invite His Excellency to the podium, I'd like to take a moment to greet members of the media. Welcome, we're glad you're here. Thank you for coming. As you know, we reserved the question and answer period of the presentation for members of the academic community. If you would like to ask specific questions of His Excellency, please wait until we break for lunch. Would everybody please join me in welcoming His Excellency Dr. Ibrahhim Ibrahim to the Dean's Lecture Series. Welcome.
This is how you start, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to say that you all are distinguished, so I will stop here. Distinguished guests, today I will try, it's not easy, but I will try to talk about the course of development of the gas strategy in Qatar, and I will try to show how Qatar was able to reach its leading position in the gas industry, and maybe I will make some suggestions about how could Qatar maintain its leading role in the future. I will start with what Qatar does now. In the year 2017, Qatar exported 77.5 million tons annually of LNG. This represents about 27% of the world LNG export. This is despite the fact of the tremendous increase in the export coming from Australia and the US. Still, Qatar is the largest exporter of LNG in the world. It exports to all major markets in the Far East, in Asia, East Asia, West Asia, Europe, North America, South America, you name it. It also exports LNG and natural gas to Arab countries, Egypt, UAE, Oman, and Kuwait. So it's not only the largest exporter of LNG in the world, it's the second largest exporter of gas in the world. So if you bring with it also, in addition to LNG, natural gas. And it had about 65% of the world capacity in GTL, gas to liquid technology. I guess some of you, maybe some other people will say, so what? Qatar has plenty of gas, is selling a lot of gas, so where is the story? Actually, the story becomes more complicated and these achievements become more impressive if we introduce all the challenges that Qatar faced and its responses to these challenges in developing its own gas strategy. I will try in this lecture or this paper, whatever we want to call it. I called it lecture because we have some students. I call it paper because we have some experts here. On some of these challenges that Qatar faced and the way it responded to them. At the beginning, actually, Qatar, maybe I would say before that, that the rise of Qatar in the gas industry was not because it had plentiful of resources. It wasn't, the course of development wasn't really by chance. And the achievements that Qatar made did not come by a stroke of luck. Behind these achievements were visionary leadership with conviction and commitment, forward and competent management that's capable of precise execution and capable and willing to take calculated risk. In addition, we have tremendous partnership from very reputable company that helped, no question, and also the demand from a distant market. They wanted to diversify their consumption and not to be dependent on only a few resources. Okay. But that was not always the case. That was not from the beginning. The strategy or developing it was delayed. The vision of developing the strategy was confounded by what really course should we take, what are the objectives of this strategy. At the beginning, now I say that, I think. At the beginning, really, Qatar met with semi-indifference, maybe complete indifference, to the discovery of the gas in its land. The Qatar field, North Field, was discovered in 1971. And as you know, that field is the largest field in the world. It was at some time estimated to have maybe 13 or 14% of the world reserve. And despite that fact, Qatar did not take steps, influential or meaningful steps, to develop that field until 1987, and the first production of that field came in 1991. So it took Qatar 20 years in order to have its first production from the North Field. Now, why is that? In the 70s, not only in Qatar, but in the whole area, gas was not considered to be a viable source. Most of them were flaring. Most of the gas, it's come from production. In Qatar, it was the need to satisfy its local needs, Qatar, from gas, was satisfied from associated gas, from the production of oil. So there was no interest to develop that field, either locally or internationally. There was no interest at all. Now, these things have changed. Changed in the early 80s, where Qatar thought, well, maybe we are satisfying our needs from associated gas, but Qatar industry, especially petrochemical industry, will benefit greatly from expansion, especially using methane and ethane to expand the existing production of petrochemical and maybe to go forward in its downstream industries. So Qatar realized now the usefulness of the gas that it discovered. But the question also remains, should we develop the field in order to satisfy the local needs, or should we develop that field also to export gas? And believe me, at that time, there was differences on this. Many people thought, okay, we will develop the field, but that will be developed only to satisfy the local needs and, of course, the local industries. Forget about export, because export, either it's not profitable or it is more profitable, actually, to develop our industries than sell it as raw material. So again, you can see the confusion about what strategy should we follow. We still don't know whether we use that gas for local needs or for export. This controversy did not last long. In 1984, by an Amiri decree, are you following this? Okay. By an Amiri decree, Qatar Gas was established in order to export LNG. And the leadership now here in Qatar decided that's it. Now everything is settled. We want to develop the gas for local needs and also for exports at the same time. When we talk about gas strategy, we have a lot of things. We have export through pipelines, we have export through GTL, we have export through LNG. So I will concentrate only on the LNG strategy, because I think this was the major factor that gave Qatar this position in the world. So let's talk about the LNG strategy, how it developed. Our first connection with Japan brought the reality to us that really we have a lot of gas. True, it's true that we have a lot. It's true that we have a leadership that's committed to export gas. It's true that we have local stability, but these conditions are not sufficient in order to export LNG. We need more. What we need, in addition, we need experienced operator in LNG. We need infrastructure that's much better developed. We need, in addition, financial, actually, operational and managerial supports. So really, the establishment of Qatar Gas was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning of the story. How we gonna sell gas? How we gonna meet these requirements? And it took Qatar Gas about 12 years. It took it about 8 years in order to have its first sales and purchase agreement, and about another 4 years in order to be able to export LNG. So it took Qatar about 12 years to have its first export of LNG. But how did it get it? It got it through doing many sacrifices. The first one, we had to build, in order to get our infrastructure capable of meeting this requirement, we have to build a hub and that has a class, world-class, actually, port, and that we have to do it before we get even our first sales and purchase agreement. Sheikh Hamad, who was at that time, the father Amir, who was the heir apparent at that time, gave the order, let us build that port. That port actually costed about $2 billion finally, and it was built before, remember, before any signing of sales and purchase agreement. This came a little bit later, only a little bit later, but that was one of the requirements. Second, during that time, British Petroleum was one of our major operators. They withdrew, little bit earlier, they withdrew from the partnership on the assumption that this is not very profitable. So fortunately, we found another operator, which is Mobil at that time. Now it's ExxonMobil. They were looking to enhance their gas reserve. They were looking for more LNG, so they accepted to join, but only if we give them guarantee of the next 20 million tons of production in the future. Finally, they accepted. We negotiated with 10 million tons. So that's another sacrifice. Third, even our partners, by that time, they were worried that the project is not profitable. So Qatar has to forego its royalties on feed gas if the project doesn't achieve a certain rate of return. At that time, I think it was 12%. So with all these sacrifices, we managed our first shipment to Japan. But remember, we're talking about first shipment, first purchase, we're talking about maybe 4 million tons of LNG. That's a big deal. Then it came the reality that, okay, we managed to overcome the cost, especially shipping cost, to Japan because the prices in Japan was high. But what happened in the future? We have another prime market in Europe. We cannot go to it. The prices are lower, and we cannot export this. And how are we going to compete with regional, even in the Far East, with regional exporter of LNG like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei? They are so close, and our competition is going to be difficult with them. So we cannot go to one major market. We will have difficulty competing in the second future one, in the second market. We have a lot of gas. We're not going to be satisfied with 4 million tons or 6 million tons or any of that. Of course, at that time, nobody dreamed that we're going to sell 77 million tons. In the second gas conference in Doha, there were a lot of experts talking about Qatar LNG, and many experts, including, we don't want to mention, Sheikh Zaki Yamani, who said, okay, Qatar at most can sell with its situation, maybe not 4, more than that, maybe 6 or maybe 10 million tons. And that's about it. And many had that doubt about our ability to continue and compete. So the reaction of Qatar was, okay, of course, they're saying this because we are not close to any market. We are not close to the market of Japan and Korea, like those countries, Malaysia and others. We are not close to Europe because we have suppliers like Algeria and Norway. They are much closer. So we accepted the fact that we are not close to any major market. But at the same time, we decided, okay, we are not close to any major, we have to be not far from any major market. We don't want to compete with Indonesia only there. We don't want to compete with Algeria and Europe. We don't want to compete. We will become world suppliers of LNG. And in this case, we have to develop that strategy, world supplier of LNG, and we have to do what it takes to become a world supplier. So what have we done? What Qatar has done? Not we, Qatar. What Qatar has done. By the way, what you are hearing from me is not written anywhere. It's based on the action that was taken by Qatar. Okay, first, we need to have an integrated project. That's one condition, an integrated project. Second, we have to minimize cost. Third, we have to have a brand name. Okay, we started with the first one. An integrated project, we produce the gas, we liquefy it, we transport it, and we have even the receiving terminals in different countries for that. This model gave Qatar the agility to be able to benefit from the price differential that existed in the world. The price of gas in Japan was different from the price of gas in Europe was different from the price of gas in the US. So we benefited because of that model from the price differential. We move the gas to where it's better priced. And also that gave us the agility to respond to the consumers in fast way. And also it gave us the chance of reducing or increasing the efficiency of the whole supply delivery. We are not talking only about reducing or increasing efficiency in production. We are talking about increasing efficiency in production, in liquefaction, in shipping, and in terminals. So then our second, let's work on cost minimization. Is it there? I cannot see, by the way, anything of this. Cost minimization or optimization, you name it. Okay, we started with the production. We had the bore wells much larger than ever, mainly to maximize the production from the platform of gas platform offshore. And also in production, we moved the dehydration process from being offshore into onshore, and that reduced the cost tremendously. Second, on liquefaction, we led the industry in trying to achieve economies of scale. How? By increasing the size of the plant of LNG. The size of the plant at that time was only 2 million tons. This is mainly because of the cost is high, and also the finance is not easy, and usually the sales and purchase agreement at that time were around 2 million tons. So we said we change all that. So from 1997, our LNG plant was 2.2 million tons. We led the industry in expanding the size of the plant. In 1999, it became 3.3, the plant size. In 2004, it became 4.7. And in 2007, it became 7.8 million tons. That reduced the cost tremendously. But it was calculated risk. The risk first of expanding the plant. This plant didn't exist before. The risk of being able to sell that amount of gas, and of course, we had to follow very active and finance in order to achieve this. But the cost was reduced. Third, shipping. Shipping, at that time, again, I'm talking about the time we started our first production. Ships, the size of ships were around 135,000 cubic meters. 140, 135, maybe even less. And that was the cost of transportation was very high because of that. And because of our location, for us, it was extreme disadvantage compared with regional exporters. So again, we led with the shipping industries in Korea in expanding the size of these ships. So we had the size increased of our new ships in Q-Flex, we call it Q-Flex, 210,000 cubic meters, and the Q-Max, 250,000 cubic meters. And that reduced, again, the cost of shipping. By the way, Q, for your information, stands for Qatar. So Qatar became a standard thing. When they talk about a ship of the size 250, they say Q-Max, Qatar Max. The same with Q-Flex. And also, in addition to that, we made sure that we liquefy the boiled gas. As you know, LNG boiled during the ship, especially if the distance is high. We had a re-liquefaction plant on the ships themselves. Again, that reduced the cost tremendously. Okay, so this is our cost optimization. Integration, cost optimization, but we were not satisfied. We said no. We want a brand name. Gas is gas, but Qatar gas is going to be different. How? In how we dealt with our customers. We had our motto, reliability. On reliability, on time, every time. That's it, no delay. I remember during some problems in the area, some political, not political, yes, not internally, but externally, where during the Iraq and situation and the invasion there, that some helicopters were stopping from going to the platform. An order from His Highness the Emir at that time. Sheikh Hamad, no stop. You don't stop. We don't delay. On time, every time. And so far, we had so many thousands of shipments, always on time. Second, we have flexibility. We used to have our negotiation contract that fits the customer itself. Third, loyalty. So when our customer needed help, so Japan, whether it's Japan or Korea, when they had interruption either in their supply in Indonesia and other places, or because they underestimated the needs, they come to us. And we made sure that we gave them help on this. And the last thing, of course, our brand name is trustworthiness, the respect of our contract, the sanctity of the contract. We strict obligation, our strict contract obligation is strictly enforced. Never change whatever you signed on. So that's, in essence, how we developed our LNG strategy. Now, you might say, okay, so, fine. What are you going to do now? Are you going to stick to it? Are you going to do something else? Is there any reason to change it? So this is really the question. I will try to bring a few points on this. Now, future demand of LNG is really witnessing unbelievable change. Whether we're talking about the supply side or we're talking about the demand side. On the supply side, of course, we have the discovery of shale gas, where the US is leading the production from it. We have the rise, the fast rise of Australia. We have the expected rise from other countries like Russia. By the way, Russia is large exporter of gas, but not LNG. We're talking about LNG, and from countries in Africa. Now, you might say, okay, well, in addition to that, of course, we have a change in demand. There's some countries, new countries now, are leading the whole growth in LNG demand. China, India, Brazil, giant economies. We have small countries that really want to get into the club. What they used to call it rich club, they want to get involved. They want to buy LNG. And that, in the future, it will affect a lot of things. It will affect the beside the price, it will affect the conditions of the contract. Fixed destination, maybe you cannot get it anymore. Price indexation, you cannot do it always on oil, you have to do it on something else. The maturity of the gas contract, also at question, and maybe even the role of spot market will change. So how is Qatar to maintain its leading position? It was for Qatar to get to its leading position, a lot of difficulties. And I'm saying the difficulties to maintain that position is maybe even harder. Okay, I have a few suggestions. By the way, Qatar is already doing it, but we like intensification of this. The first thing, we have to intensify our gas production. We had a moratorium actually on gas for a long time. And that moratorium was dictated by the willingness of the leadership is not to damage the field. We want to make sure we don't produce too much to damage our own field. That moratorium now is changed, and Qatar Petroleum announced it's going to produce 32 million tons in addition to the 77 million tons that before. That, of course, this announcement did two things. First, it's going to keep Qatar in leading position, at least in production for a long time. And second, it will affect some marginal exporters that might think of getting into the market and changing that. Second, we have to benefit, take advantage of the discovery of shale gas. The shale gas is going to increase. By the way, the reserve of shale gas is tremendous, probably as much as the existing conventional reserve. So we cannot ignore that. We have to be part of it. We cannot say this is going to affect us negatively. It may affect the price negatively in the short term, but in the long term, we have to manage to be part of that change. We are already trying with the partnership of our LNG partners in Qatar to do a lot of exploration and development and production of oil and gas outside, including, of course, shale gas. Now, that will give us, beside the fact that we might get a return on it, will give us the spillover for us as large suppliers of gas, spillover in terms of swap. We can swap the production in the US, for instance, to the Far East, maybe from Qatar to the Far East, and so on. And also, it gives us flexibility in pricing. Instead, we could give different formula for the pricing now, since we have that gas there. Third, I think Qatar should not relinquish its role as the low-cost producer of natural gas and the cost exporter of LNG. By the way, I'm saying this, why would it relinquish that core if it ties its pricing policy with the requirement of the country itself, the social, the economic requirement? And this is, by the way, what OPEC did. It tied its pricing policy, or it had to do it with their requirement. So their budget is much high. They tried to affect the price by lowering it in order to drive a competitor out. They couldn't because they relinquished that low price role to their social and economic commitment. We shouldn't do that in the case of gas. As a global supplier, we should intensify our efforts in order to increase the demand for LNG. We could, of course, we have many small countries, they are not capable of importing LNG because they cannot build terminal, they don't have gas pipeline. We should invest in doing this in order. So we have, by the way, the some new development. They called FSRU. It's floating store regasification terminal. On ships you do it. So we should invest in that to make sure that LNG reaches the small and not developed country. And of course, we should pay attention to the bigger consumers also. Lastly, we should really, as a major supplier of LNG, we should participate and do research on how to increase the demand for LNG, because now we are talking about maybe changing all the feed of shipping in the world from fuel oil to LNG. So we should participate in that, and this is fantastic opportunity. Of course, the opportunity also in trying to make sure that gas is a feed for transportation. I think I said everything I want to say. Of course, I will say something if you ask me, but as of now, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. This is Fahad Al-Mari, a PhD candidate. As we know, and related to the blockade which we are facing since 2017, one of the countries, the UAE, they are receiving from us a shipment from a gas shipment from the Dolphin. And as you know, as ethical, we haven't disconnected the pipeline by shifting the gas to them. But are we reconsidering the prices again in this meantime, or with the new contract?
I think I told you about our brand name, remember? You can mention it. One of them is what? The sanctity of the contract. We have obligated, our obligation is strictly applied. We will never change our obligation. And by the way, that stand, despite the fact what the Emirate did to us, and just for the information, even the price that's being sold to the Emirate is much lower than the world price. We will not change that, because when it was done on the basis not of economics, by the way, on the basis that we wanted to make sure that our gas goes to all Gulf countries. But regardless, this stand gave us the moral ground. After that, two countries that were very difficult, they're trying to negotiate with them for a long time, Pakistan and Bangladesh, they came to us and said, if this is the way you behave with your contract, we're going to buy from you. So what we did, of course, this is our motto, but at the same time, in the long term, this is the best for Qatar, to strictly apply its obligation.
My question is, how do you think research can help Qatar Gas, or how can research help Qatar to intensify its exports? R&D, I mean.
In terms of the research, yeah. You see, we can do a lot of research. One of them I mentioned. Now, there is a big trend toward changing the feed of shipping, all shipping, from fuel oil to LNG. That's a big thing if it happens. So we have to be part of this. In terms of research, how to do it best, you see? How to, and investment. We should invest in this too, see? But also there are a lot of things, for instance, environmentally. I think since we are talking about lengthening the duration of gas as a viable source of energy, we have to make sure we have to improve the performance even of gas now by research. How we do this? One of them is to reduce the emission. It is the lowest emission in terms of hydrocarbon compared with oil, but we still can reduce that emission. We have also to increase the efficiency. The efficiency, by the way, of gas is still more in electricity, more than oil, but we can do it more, you see? And also research how to increase the demand. Some of them, of course, need investment, how to improve the ability or to increase the ability of low economic developing countries or lower GDP. We could do it through investment. So through investment and research, we can improve the position either for the use of LNG or for its characteristics.
Hi, Dr. Ibrahim. Thank you very much again for the good lecture. Two things I'd just like to understand your views on. One is, who do you believe should own the assets, the gas, the LNG assets? Should it be QP? Should it be LNG companies? What are your views on that? And then when it comes to the expansion of LNG, who do you think is best placed to actually manage that expansion, to project manage the expansion?
If I understand your question correctly, you're saying who should be
First of all, who should,
for LNG export?
yeah, who should own the assets and who should manage the expansion? And do you have any views on that?
Yeah, I think, yes, it's already set. We have Qatar Gas now, as you know. We had a merger between Qatar Gas and Ras Gas. And you want to call it merger, you want to make your takeover, you call it what you want. But we have one company, it's Qatar Gas. So that's the one responsible for the marketing, for the development of LNG. In addition, about the expansion, we have, of course, the mother company, which is QP, and QP would be leading that situation in terms of the expansion. I don't know, did I answer the question?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And before you leave, I do have a token of our appreciation for you coming out.